It's the final Wednesday in November, which means that the month is winding down and ultimately 2020. But before we cross over into a new year, we'll meet up with December, the month of merriment. While it may look a bit different because of COVID-19, a few things will remain the same. We'll explore one such thing today. Hi, I'm Theodore Henry. Let's start exploring in today's Jamaica Magazine. As always, welcome.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh and this is your JIS News for Wednesday, November 25. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced revised COVID-19 measures for December 1 to January 15, 2021. In Parliament Tuesday, Mr. Holness said curfew hours for Christmas Day, Boxing Day and New Year's Day would be between 7 p.m. and 5 a.m. the following day. The regular curfew hours will be bumped up by an hour to 10 p.m. daily. The 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. restriction on movement will cover December 1 to 24, December 27 to 31, and January 2 to 15.
If December goes badly in terms of numbers, we cannot reopen schools. And that's the trade-off. If we don't maintain the protocols and we see where this becomes a threat, then we will have to even put in place even tighter curfew measures and tighter infection control measures, which could have even greater negative economic impact. So it really comes down to personal responsibility.
Prime Minister Holness says the public gathering limit will remain at 15 persons. Amendments are now being made to include a 15-person limit on private gatherings over the Christmas period. The ban on funerals, parties and events remains in place. Mr. Holness also made a special appeal to Jamaicans in the diaspora.
If you don't have to travel, then don't travel at this period of time. But if you do decide to come, we will still welcome you, not necessarily with an embrace, but we will welcome you socially distant with an elbow or a namaste. And we expect that you will maintain the quarantine, stay and celebrate within your household grouping, and enjoy the season and preserve the lives of our loved ones.
Parliament has approved an amendment to the Representation of the People Act to allow for the postponement of the local government elections. The elections, which were last held on November 28, 2016, were constitutionally due this year. But the new bill seeks to put off the elections up to February 27, 2022. In bringing the bill, Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie said the country was not in a position to hold the elections at this time.
The reality is that the financial constraints that the country is now experiencing, our citizens, Madam Speaker, wants us now to focus on the recovery from COVID-19 and the damage caused by rain so that they can return to a path of prosperity.
500,000 students at the primary, secondary and tertiary levels are expected to benefit from the Microsoft 365 Education Software License free of cost. Education Minister Fable Williams made the disclosure during Tuesday's sitting of the House of Representatives. She said the partnership with Microsoft was worth $2.1 billion annually.
The ministry will be distributing these licenses to our classroom teachers or principals, students at the secondary level, as well as students at our teachers' colleges, our community colleges, other multidisciplinary institutions, Edna Manley College for the Visual and Performing Arts, the College of Agriculture, Science and Education, G.C. Foster College, the Caribbean Maritime University, Nocalva Polytech, students in the equivalent of grades 10 to 13 at our independent schools, and children in our primary schools.
Microsoft Office 365 is a cloud-based platform which includes the full Office suite of Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, PC-only Publisher, and Access, as well as Teams, SharePoint, and Forms. Under the license, students will also be able to download Office Pro Plus to any of their home PCs and get access to the most current and secure version of the software. There's been a 37.2% reduction in the number of children reported missing between January and June of this year when compared to the same period last year. Youth Minister Fable Williams says between January and June, there were 323 fewer children reported missing when compared to the corresponding period of 2019. Of the 545 children reported missing in the period, 417 have been accounted for, while the rest are still missing.
Between January and June 2020, 354 families have been contacted. The Ananda Alert Secretariat continues to make contact with families as soon as they are notified of the child's disappearance. They also gather additional details surrounding the circumstances and the family's coping capacity. Continuous contact is maintained to provide support to the family during this time. However, should they require further in-depth social intervention, the case is referred to the respective regional director within the agency for their action.
And as government looks to the phased reopening of in-person school, Minister Williams says meetings are being held with the Ministry of Transport and private shuttle service providers. The talks should result in greater protection for children, including observation of the COVID-19 protocols as they journey to and from school. Prior to the closure of face-to-face classes, the ministry made provisions for 250 selected schools in 13 parishes to use the services of eligible transport operators to provide a shuttle transportation service for more than 7,500 students. Also in Parliament Tuesday, the Education Minister called on parents to make greater use of the offerings of the National Parenting Support Commission. The minister's appeal follows a recent surge in incidents of children being killed or harmed. According to Minister Williams, in many of these instances, adult supervision was absent.
Our National Parent Support Commission has an important role to play in assisting parents to develop the skills they need to raise and protect their children. They're playing a tremendous role in this regard. Yet too many parents are not availing themselves of the counseling and other services that are available to help them.
The National Parenting Support Commission has established 36 helplines that are being manned by competent persons who are trained in psychosocial first aid. Persons having difficulties getting through to any of the helplines may call the Commission directly at 876-560-9272. And finally, parliamentarians are being urged to condemn acts of violence against women and girls. The call comes from Gender Minister Olivia Grange as the island joins the rest of the world in observation of International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls today. Minister Grange has also condemned Sunday's gruesome murder of an 81-year-old grandmother and her 2 granddaughters at Trial Heights in St. Catherine. She says the Bureau of Gender Affairs has been dispatched to the community to provide support to the family. According to Minister Grange, there's a need to speed up the implementation process for the amended laws which give greater protection for vulnerable groups.
As a country, we feel distress and we sometimes despair when we hear of these brutal acts of violence. But we mustn't retreat and we must not surrender. And we cannot give in to the gunmen. This is when we must fight back stronger than ever. Fight back to the point where they have to retreat and not us.
This year's commemoration of International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls is being held under the theme, The Empowered Woman, from Victim to Survivor. The day also serves as the start of the 16 days of activism to end violence against women and children. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
My job is to ensure that every man, woman and child maintain good health at all times.
Our primary function is to ensure that government services are delivered effectively and efficiently.
We are building forward
together.
We're still in Parent Month with just a few days to close the curtains on November. Parents all over the country continue to make that special impact in the lives of their children. Meet one parent who, though faced with an exceptionally heavy burden, powers through to give her child the best.
Meet Alex Fraser. He's a 10-year-old student of Dunrobin Primary School in Kingston. He's just like most other boys his age. He loves to play football, hang out with his friends, and play computer games. The only major difference, he cannot walk like most other boys his age. Alex was born with spina bifida, a condition where a baby's neural tube fails to develop normally, causing damage to the spinal cord and bones of the spine. Alex's mother, Tamara Brown, has 3 other children, all of whom have no birth defects. But from Alex's birth, Tamara was determined that he would be given the same opportunities.
I want Alex to have a good education. No matter if anything happened to me tomorrow, I want him to have a good education. Can't complain, the children, the teachers, love him a lot.
It's fun having Alex around, even though sometimes it's like he's not even there. He's so quiet, he's so obedient, and he gets along well with his peers.
Parenting a child with disabilities like Alex's takes extra special loving care.
I have to make sure, go to school, eat, because Alex is a very sick child. Alex have high blood pressure, he has a kidney problem, they have to take antibiotic every day, they have to take mineral oil every day.
It means Tamara has to be at school with Alex for the entire school day on many occasions, as there are times when he doesn't have an assigned special needs assistant.
We're always here for Alex's mom and for Alex. She has been a strong parent though, doesn't complain a lot, but we have been there in support, maybe for lunch or any advice that she need. So she has been a great parent. Alex's mother, she never gives up. She really wants the best for her child, and she should be commended for actually fighting to get the best in life for Alex. And we're happy he's a part of us.
I would like to work with computer when I grow up.
Antonika Gunter-Gale, Director of the Early Stimulation Program in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, works closely with parents of children like Alex, especially in the early stages.
Parents, guardians, caregivers of children with disabilities face a number of issues. Financial, is one of them. When you take, for instance, sometimes a child with special needs go beyond the years of using diapers, they have to take soft food. So that means, the blending, the buying of certain food items, So there are a number of challenges. Medication, you think about appointments. The child needs to go to the hearing, specialist. The child needs to go to the audiology. The child needs to go to various appointments, and it does take cash, to care on the part of the parent for persons who don't understand that this is a child with special needs, and the child, act up in the public, screaming, shouting, hyperactive, a child with autism, very antisocial, not getting on like his peers. These things can really cause much stress to the parents of children with disabilities.
But you might ask, how can a regular parent afford all these expenses? And are there any existing support programs for parents of children with disabilities?
There are a number of support through the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, under which this program falls, the Early Stimulation Program. A mother, guardian, who really cannot find the wherewithal to care, you have support in terms of intervention. You have financial assistance in terms of a rehabilitation grant that is offered through the ministry for parents or guardians of children with special needs. You have the Jamaica Council for persons with disabilities that also offer support and financial assistance for, starting up your own business, advice. and that sort of a thing. So there are a number of areas. We have the PATH program that assists with adaptive aids, such as hearing aids, walkers, wheelchairs, medication.
For parents who, like Tamara Brown, are unable to maintain regular jobs as a result of having to be with their disabled children at home or school, the Early Stimulation Program guides them to numerous entrepreneurship opportunities.
We have parents, for example, a simple thing as making soaps, different soaps, putting together, soaps that is tested and passed, approved through the Bureau of Standards, selling soaps. So we have mothers doing phone cards. We have parents doing their little craft at home, rearing chickens at home, doing eggs, So there are a number of areas while taking care of the child at home, the parent could do.
For more information, you may contact the Early Stimulation Program at 95 Hanover Street, Kingston. Call them at 922-5585. Children with special needs need extra special parents.
As we continue zoning in on parents and the special roles they play, here's a bit of help for those questioning how to effectively handle the job.
Parenting can be very frustrating, and a lot of times people don't feel like they really have an answer to everything, and the truth is that is the reality. But there are different things that people can try. We're not saying that any one thing works for everybody or that you'll even get the outcome that you want immediately. Especially when you're dealing with young children, you might have to try something several times before you see a particular result. So for example, if it is that you want a child to learn the difference between right and wrong, a lot of times in the past we use pain to teach that this is wrong, right? But we find that ultimately when you hit a child, what you're teaching them to do is when I don't like something, I should hit and I should lash out. What you want to try in a situation like that, you can try removing privileges. If there are things that the child might love to do, or even the age-old timeout, where you say, listen, for this period, you have to sit by yourself, there's no communication, there's no talking, sit down and be still. Sometimes you have to physically just hold your child and help them to breathe through it, because you have some children where they have so much emotion and so much anger and they want to get it out that it's really difficult for them to regulate it at such a young age. And so you have to physically hold them, put your hand on them, help them to breathe through it until they're calm. And with children, even if they don't understand necessarily the big concepts of right and wrong, they can sometimes understand tone. Right? And tone is not the same thing as lashing out and using certain words and calling them different names. Tone is being firm and saying, I do not want you on this. So for example, if a child keeps going up on something, you might have to take them off it 10 times, right? And continue to reinforce with the same tone and consistency that you do not want them on this. And also for younger children, sometimes you have to be the one to remove whatever it is that you don't want them to interact with from the environment, right? Because they're so young and so impulsive, you can't necessarily leave it to them to understand I shouldn't touch this thing, right? So that's how we deal with the younger children.
A common practice while socializing, celebrating, or just relaxing is the consumption of alcohol. To some, this is second nature. All too common also are the negative effects that drinking has on the human body. While occasional drinking is not necessarily a problem, it's the excessive intake that can have severe consequences. The effects of too much alcohol consumption include blurred vision, breathing problems, impaired judgment, concentration problems, slurred speech, and of course, addiction resulting from long-term use. Now, these effects may vary based on a variety of factors, such as how much you drink, how often you drink, your age, health status, and family history. Alcohol use does not have to be reckless. Here are some tips to practice responsible drinking.
Plan ahead. If you plan on drinking at an event, get a designated driver.
Yeah. Set your own limit. No much is too much.
Know your family history. If you come from a family with a history of alcohol dependence, you might want to limit your drinking.
Remember, responsible drinking is a very simple thing.
We're here in St. Thomas at one of the oldest botanical gardens in the Western Hemisphere, the Bath Botanical Gardens. This is the beginning of a journey to discover the scientific, cultural and historical value of public gardens. Come now, let's explore these national and natural treasures. So what differentiates a public garden from a regular place where flowers and trees grow?
A public garden is an institution where plants are collected for the purpose of education, research, conservation, and recreation.
Along with Bath, there are 3 other public gardens on the island: Cassington in St. Mary and Hope and Syncona Gardens, both in St. Andrew. The public can access these venues at no cost. Today, we'll be exploring Bath and Cassington. Except for Hope Gardens, the Public Gardens Division of the Ministry of Agriculture, Commerce, Industry and Fisheries, MICAF, preserves and maintains these natural beauties.
The objective then of the public garden is to conserve the biodiversity of plant life in the island. So we are here to ensure that the plants are maintained, they are conserved, they are preserved, that research is conducted on them so that generations and generations will have that area.
Bath Botanical Garden was the first public garden established on the island. As a research site, imported plants were introduced here to assess how they would adapt to the tropical environment.
Food that Jamaicans love, like breadfruit, was first introduced to this garden by Captain Bligh. He came here with the breadfruit, the ackee and OTT apple, those are the famous ones. Other plants were introduced to the garden that people see all the time, the bougainvilleas, the crotons, all of these were first introduced to the gardens.
Constant flooding from the nearby sulfuric spring destroyed many of the plants and led to a decline of the garden. Though nowhere near its former glory, the space still provides the opportunity for persons to come and enjoy nature's bounty.
Bath is a beautiful garden. It's one of the gardens that has the atmosphere that you come in here. It's a cool, calming environment that I would encourage anybody to come. If you want to study, you can come here and study. If you want to just come out with your church group, want to come out with any little grouping, or even yourself and a friend can come and walk and learn about the different plants that are in the garden.
Bath's fall saw the rise of this location as the premier growing spot for exotic plants in Jamaica.
The garden you're visiting is Cassington Botanical Garden. It was owned by a man called Colonel Castle. Colonel Castle traveled all over the country and bring plants from different countries and plant here. So when he get old, he donated to the government of Jamaica. The government finished cultivate it and give it his name, Cassington Botanical Garden.
Growing here are many of the plants introduced on the island in the 19th and 20th century. These include poinciana, Bombay mango, navel orange, and tangerine.
One time it had over 400 palms. I think we're down to 180 species. So you have an area dedicated to the various palms that were introduced into the gardens. You also have rare fruits like mangosteen, and they have another one, the real velvet apple, that you wouldn't find anywhere else.
This is the Phoenix palm. When you knock it like this with a stone, it gives you sound. Why it gave you that sound? Because it's hollow inside. The more it grows old, the more it expands hollow.
Educational tours are just some of the offerings here at Cassington. But you can stop by for a swim if that's your thing. Perhaps a cookout is more your flavor. Or set up a spot on the lawn and bask in the glory of the great outdoors. Our expedition of the historic Bath and diverse Cassington Gardens ends here. Syncona and hope await, but in another edition of Jamaica Magazine. Until then, keep looking out.
We've been talking much about closing off this month. I know we're not quite there yet, but I want to do a bit of a recap with just a few moments that stood out in this month. So here goes. Number 1, face-to-face school happened. 17 institutions, which include 12 primary and 5 secondary schools, were selected for the pilot face-to-face in school project, and they returned a satisfactory grade, according to the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Favor Williams. Number 2, heavy rains, but heavier help. We've been experiencing a lot of rains over the last few weeks, which resulted in damage to some roadways. With that, the Prime Minister announced a $1 billion road program for members of Parliament to fix some of the damage. Number 3, efforts to control non-communicable diseases. There's also much focus on non-communicable diseases, or NCDs. So much so that the Ministry of Health and Wellness launched a $100 million public-private partnership for the control of NCDs. Now, 5,000 non-COVID-19 patients from select health centers will be able to access care from private physicians. And number 4, a win for the Reggae Boys. November is bringing a bit of luck to football as Jamaica defeated Saudi Arabia 2-1 in the final match of their 2-game international series last week Tuesday. November witnessed and continues to witness many more things. Do a bit of reading and research and share with us something good happening in our island home via our Twitter or Instagram page. Just tag us. All of these things count towards making Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. This is where we close off today's magazine. We hope you learned something new. And if you need a refresher, check out our YouTube channel. You'll also find past episodes there. And also, why don't you visit our website at www.jis.gov.jm. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have much to share. So join us again tomorrow and join us there online. Until then, I'm Theodore Henry. See you real soon.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.